Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our presentation. Charlotte and I will be presenting the topic gender advertising and feminism. So for today's present agenda, we will begin by introducing briefly a timeline of advertisement from the 1970s to the 2010s, with more detailed examples for each decade. Following that, we will talk about the 10 key features of representations of gender in contemporary advertisement presented in Gill's article. We will also talk about Asian women in lifestyle and fashion advertising in relation to one of the key features. Finally, we will end with the conclusion and our discussion question. Let's begin with a brief introduction of the timeline. During the 1970s and 1980s, gender representation was noticeably function ranking, with men predominantly instructing women. The next decade later, in the 1990s, gender representation had a significant improvement in a positive manner. Finally, in the 2000s and 2010s, the formal gender representation of women and subordination still remains. So diving into the 1970s and 1980s, here's a comparison of how women and men are portrayed in adverts. So starting with women, they're generally portrayed as housewives and mothers doing chores at home. We notice as well that women are always presented to be lower than men in adverts. Furthermore, women are commonly depicted as dependent, the need to be instructed or guided, and often performing subordination roles. It is also very common to see women presented as visually attractive in adverts, similar to just being a visual object, rarely with any knowledge of the advertised product and that they're associated with. The next point is the representation of older women in adverts who are noticeably absent, or when present are portrayed and linked with gossiping or interfering mother and mother-in-law. Lesbian too are generally absent from adverts. Black women are generally portrayed as animalistic, sexuality, or exotic, while Asian women are portrayed as sexual submissiveness with sexual services often indicated. Here we notice a significant improvement in gender representation. More adverts are portraying women in workplaces with authoritative statuses and, most importantly, being represented as an independent individual. During this time, women were divided into two styles of representation, one being a safe, reassuring motherly figure at home, and another being young, free, and sexy at work. Despite this positive change, many other features from the 1970s and 1980s remained the same. Moving forward to the 2000s and 2010s, adverts portraying women are still positively improving. In the 2000s, there were less stereotypes towards women in adverts, and they were generally portrayed as strong, talented individual women. Surprisingly, most models were cloth. However, in 2010s, there were noticeably more gender stereotypes through messages rather than visual images. Shockingly, women are still being portrayed as subordinates to men, and models similar to the 2000s were mostly cloth. So now we will move on to talking about advertising and post-feminism and introducing Gill's 10 key features of representations of gender in contemporary advertisement. So we'll begin with the appeasement of women's anger. With criticism of how females are portrayed in adverts, advertisers address these criticisms by directly addressing it. An example from the article is that we see how Nike addressed women's insecurities about living up to the idealized images of what women's bodies should look like or be. Next, the shift from being sex objects to desiring objects, we see that women are choosing to become sex objects, freely choosing to become more active, confident, and assertive female subjects. However, despite this, we notice an increasing objectification of women in advertisements. The body parts are being fragmented into specific parts as shown in the image here. Not only women's bodies are being fragmented, men's too are also increasingly being dissected. This idea of fragmenting body parts is described as a form of violence. Jean Kilburn mentioned in her documentary Killing Us Softly that this violence can be viewed as objectifying human beings, in other words, treating human bodies as visual objects. Revenge themes raise the idea of love and hate relationship between men and women, and therefore the battle of the sexes. And we can see in the image above that violence still exists in adverts, but for this case in particular, violence is performed by women towards men, focusing on being and pleasing ourselves. Here, women are presented as not needing to seek men's approval about pleasing themselves. We see female empowerment in the sense that women are completely free and can be and look however they want to be. Followingly, the eroticization of male bodies are very common. We see very little gender representation amongst men's adverts. There is a specific generic model type that we see in adverts such as white, young, muscular, slim, having facial features that connote a combination of softness and like strength, having strong jaws, having soft looking eyes, clear skin, and this form of eroticized presentation of male bodies is becoming normalized and mainstream. The development of curved chic, on the other hand, it's very extremely rare in general to see lesbians or gay men being presented in adverts. It is even rarer to see adverts normalizing the idea of queerness. Instead, we see it being signified through hypersexualized chic. For example, the lipstick lesbian theme, with a really eroticized imagery primarily targeting heterosexual men. In a way, as well, it's portraying lesbians in a sexualized manner. The use of gender reversal in adverts is not common, but it showcases that women are having more power and control in, for example, workplaces, working in senior management positions while men are struggling to carry out traditional women roles such as cleaning or cooking. In the video, you see the recreation of adverts showcasing like what it would be like if men were to execute women's roles, bearing in mind as well the messages in the adverts. So the attempts to re-eroticize gender difference, Gill mentioned the idea of Mars versus Venus, that men and women will never truly understand each other because there exists too many stereotypes of who, how, and what men or women should be according to their gender. In the following advert, Heineken really pointed out the idea of beer, that it's not only a beverage to be drunk by men, that women too can drink beer, but most importantly, cocktails are not a feminine beverage, and that men too sometimes prefer that over a beer.
Gill discusses in response to feminist critiques is to move away from the perfectly beautiful models and using more natural looking people or even more edgy and authentic looking models. And this happens not only in fashion but also in film and music. However, an interesting remark Gill also makes is that this edginess remains very minimal in mainstream media advertising. For instance, only freckles have been seen as a moving away from the perfect beauty of models. Later on, I will talk about the Dove beauty campaign, which is one of the leading campaigns about promoting that the body comes in many shapes, sizes, and ages. And I will talk about the fact that older women are also rarely visible, except for medicine or mobility ads advertisements. The following video will show the runway of Joseva da Silva, who used models of various sizes, skin colors, and disabilities in the New York Fashion Week, which is similar to the example of Gill from the runway of Alexander McQueen in 1999. As Vivian already mentioned, there used to be criticism on how females were portrayed in advertisements, but this, however, has profoundly changed in ads of recent years as a consequence of commodity feminism, which incorporates the cultural power and energy of feminism in advertisements. Feminism has become a visual style or look of independence, freedom, and autonomy. Also, feminist discourse is used, where female success is connected to traditional femininity signifiers, so women can be successful and powerful as well as taken seriously and remain sexually attractive. Another way in which feminism is articulated is that feminism can be a tool to pursue the goals of femininity, or, for example, pursuing a career. There should not be a conflict between the traditional feminine skills and career success. Women can do both. And with this in mind, we can ask ourselves if this feminist representation in advertisements shows some kind of progress in earlier depictions of women as passive objects, as we have seen in our timeline in the 1970s, 80s. And maybe we can even say that advertising in general has become feminist. The following video will show a campaign of Always. Keep this video in mind because we will talk about feminist consumerism later on.
What it looks like to run like a girl.
My hair.
Show me what it looks like to fight like a girl. Now throw like a girl.
Aw.
So do you think you just insulted your sister?
No. I mean, yeah, insulted girls, but not my sister.
My name is Dakota, and I'm 10 years old.
Show me what it looks like to run like a girl. Throw like a girl. Fight like a girl. What does it mean to you when I say run like a girl?
It means run fast as you can.
In the previous key features of Gail on femininity, feminism, and the use of more edgy and authentic looking models into account, aging women in advertising are regularly not given that much attention in this aspect. Older women are typically excluded broadly from the fashionable world and of major lifestyle brands, and this comes from the idea that the aging body does not suit well with the notions of a wishful appearance. And labels and designers are wary of backlashes towards their brand value about being seen to speak to or for older women. But we are now living in an era of rapidly aging population and one in which the grey consumer is becoming ever more prevalent. And several brands have adopted women models that are older than the norm in their advertising campaigns. However, older women in fashion ads do not resemble the typical older body look or how an older women's body should look like, for example, with the thickening of the waistline. But the older models are skinny and they constitute the perfect hanger body, which is sought after by the most trendiest luxury brands. For example, for the ad of Celine was the 80-year-old and old-looking American writer Joan Didion casted, in which the brand's image of cool minimalism is confirmed, being edgy without being avant-garde. And one reason for Didion's casting is because of her body, which fits well with a fashion culture in which the extreme thinness is one of the preconditions for the staging of an edgy look. And this cool look of coolness inscribed not only across Didion's aging appearance, but across the whole ad through its invisible web of references to her history and iconic portraits from her past. And this ad is also anti-mainstream. It allows older women a range of expressions and styles to devoid of age normativity, but then also aspiring for them to be seen as what they are, an older woman, stylish and cool. So cool, unsentimental stylishness attached to older women fits well with the post-feminist sensibility, focusing on the controlled body, on individualism and choice.
I started modeling when I was 20, in the 50s that was, and then I got discovered again at 70, and I was then asked to do a shoot for Vogue, who were doing an article on aging. My eyelashes are quite long, rather sparse. I like my eyelashes to look long and thick. Ooh, fabulous. I wish I had a wig space. One of them might be all right.
Now we're coming back to the Dove campaign for Real Beauty, which has been very successful and popular. Previous research on this campaign has identified the earlier mentioned concept of feminist consumerism, which is a corporate strategy that uses feminist themes to market products to women. The book of Gill explains that this campaign of Dove was the pioneer in the use of a campaign to sell its products, which is kind of ironic to sell creams to slim and firm the body while actually being a campaign for real beauty. So therefore we must remain critical of corporate interests of the beauty industry, but we should also see the potential of campaigns such as these. So the study of Taylor Johnson and Whitehead focuses on two questions. First, is the Dove campaign for real beauty feminist? And second, should corporations do feminism? Many of the participants in their study commented that there are lots of different kinds of feminism, so they were hesitant to say whether or not the Dove campaign was truly feminist. And most participants even found that the Dove campaign was a kind of faux feminism or an inauthentic engagement with these feminist ideas. And additionally, most of them found that the women featured in the campaign were conventionally attractive, and thereby it confirmed the ideology of the compulsory beauty for women. And for the second question, anti-capitalism came into place, which stated an interesting question. So Dove is selling its products to you as a feminist campaign, but then the campaign is drenched in capitalism. So how can those two be mixed? So thinking critically about how feminist objectives are being used by corporate capitalism is therefore again crucial. The Dove campaign for real beauty exemplifies how social criticism is introduced into consumer capitalism through marketing campaigns. And we would like to know how you see the Dove campaign for real beauty. Is it feminist or capitalist or not at all? On behalf of Vivian and me, thank you very much for listening. To summarize and conclude what we've just talked about, the 10 key features of representation of gender in contemporary advertisements keeps raising questions on gender representation on today's adverts. The role of feminism, gender difference, and stereotype towards women in particular is still present in adverts today. However, it keeps evolving. And the use of more edgy, authentic looking, and older women models are becoming a new norm. Now we're going to present you an interesting discussion question, and we are really looking forward to hear your point of view on that. The presence of lesbians and gay men is rare in adverts, but when present, they are mostly depicted in a sexualized manner. In addition, despite a rise in the LGBTQ+ representation in advertising, trans people are still woefully underrepresented. Keeping in mind that the LGBTQ+ in some countries is yet to be legalized, what are your thoughts upon this form of portrayal of LGBTQ+ models in adverts? Should a brand promote its political, cultural, or social standpoints in its ads, or should it play for safe? Thank you.